My name is Sarah Lodge, and I'm from Goucher College. Today is Thursday, September 22nd, and we're here, it's 23rd, and we're here in Pikesville, Maryland, with Jacob Apelberg today. So Jacob, can you tell me where you were born and the name of the...
Yeah, I was born in a small village with the name Bonsova, not far from a bigger town, Ostrov-Mazowieck, born in October 1932, prehistory.
And did you live there your whole childhood?
I lived there until the end of 1939,
Okay.
because then when the Germans occupied our village.
Oh. Can you remember anything about the town? Like what it looked like?
It was not a town really, it was a village.
A village.
In this town, the whole population was only 800 people.
Oh.
And 269 were Jews. So essentially the little village, it was only, I believe, one street. It was not a street, it was not a non-paved street, and you had the houses on both sides. The house, when you water, we only took from a well. The restroom was something outside. Of course, we did not have electricity or this type of things. And the first time I saw a car in my life, this was when I came to Białystok. I was 9 years old. No, not 9, 7 years old. This was the first time. So that general, and because I'm Jewish, so we had also a small synagogue there, a wooden synagogue. And I remember the synagogue because I studied in Cheder. You know what is a Cheder?
No.
Cheder is the Hebrew name room, but really among the Jews in Eastern Europe who spoke Yiddish, Cheder means a religious Jewish school for small children.
Okay.
That's all what it means. So, and I studied there, and also I had to study Polish. And my mother tongue is Yiddish. That's the only language I knew when I was little.
Mm-hmm.
And Polish we were speaking only outside home. What they call the goyim. Goyim, it means Gentiles. But it's interesting, the word goy in the Bible, it has nothing to do with Gentiles. Goy, it means nation. That's all what it means. So it changes, the meaning of word changes with time. So.
And how many people lived with you in your house, or did you call it a house?
You see, I was the youngest.
Mm-hmm.
We had many brothers. So I remember, you see, because I lost everybody. I became an orphan later in my life. So we had, of course, my mother, father, then I had my grandparents. Then we had at least 5 brothers and 1 sister, but the girl, she died when she was young.
Okay.
People will die and then, yeah. So we were 6 children, and so altogether 10 people, I assume.
10 people.
Yeah.
Was it crowded, or did you feel like you had your own space? Or?
No, we had a very small home, and one room from the home was also a little store. It was a hardware store, because the Jews at that time in Poland, they could not own land to work agriculture. And I believe we were not also talented to do it, I assume. So in order to survive, you had to do something else. And we had a little hardware store, and probably from this we survived. The only thing I remember that we had 3 rooms. And my first memory comes when one day, I don't know, I was probably very little, that I lie in my bed and I just look all around and I see the walls were white, and this is the first time when I got a sense of myself, that I exist. Because sometimes you can be just alive, you don't think. It's like a little reflection. I believe, and for some reason this is stuck in my memory. And I'm not sure at what age, but at that time my father was still alive. Because I may continue, Arshav, and I tell you that my father died in 1935 or 1936. Why? Because he had to go to Warsaw with a bus to buy supplies for the store. And in one of these journeys, the whole bus fell into the river, the Wisla River. Wisla is a big river which runs through Poland from the south near Krakow until it goes, I believe, in the Baltic Sea. Now, and I was not sure about the date exactly, so what happened, about 6 years ago, I traveled to Poland and I visited the village where I was born. And I asked the older people if they remember a bus from here, that what happened with the bus, that something, an accident. And they told me it was in 1936. I remember 1935. So I'm not sure if it's Meyer or Zayas, but this reinforced me a little to believe more what I remember. Because sometimes you have doubts, you say, wait a moment, maybe it's just imagination. But imagination is also a reason why it will come. So this was the story with my father, that he died, and then my mother was left alone, and because I was the youngest, and we were very religious people. In fact, all the village, everybody was religious. I'll give you an example. See, it was one rabbi there in this little place. So let's say my mother, and I remember this, she opens an egg, and in the egg she will find a spot of blood in the egg, inside.
In the egg?
In the egg.
Oh, okay.
Then she will give me the egg, we go to the rabbi and ask him if we can use the egg, if we can eat it. The rabbi usually will clean up, he will take up and say, go back, it's okay. Because I even was not aware, but I met here a woman in Baltimore that she is older than me. And although she did not live in Warsaw, but she visited Warsaw. And she told me this was the poorest place in the whole area.
Oh, wow.
Poor people. So this was the background, because I remember many times, I still like to eat, for example, bread with onion and a little oil.
Those are some of the typical things you had? Or you
Not
remember?
a typical, but this was sometimes like a snack, you know.
Oh.
We still had food, I don't think we were starving, but there was no such a thing to throw away any piece of food. It's that even now I cannot throw away. And my wife, she tries to throw away food, I say, no, we are not going to do it. Yeah. Don't take so much on your plate,
Right.
take what you have to eat. So it has to do with the way you live. It essentially educates you. Yeah, that's the main thing.
Do you have any memories with your brothers and sister? Or your brothers? Can you remember any games you used to play or anything like that?
I tell you the truth. With my brothers, I don't remember much, because some of them at that age, when I was 7, they were already married. And they were already not living with us. They were living in another place. But one of my younger brothers, I remember, his name was Joseph. in Yiddish, Yosele. But I was playing with him, we were playing also with the children who are non-Jewish children. You know, we played together. So it's essentially, I don't know how you call this game. It's like you draw in the ground squares like this big, and then you go with a piece of stone or something, and you're on one foot and you jump, you push it.
You push the stone?
You push the stone to the next one, to the next one, to the next one, and if you can go over all of it.
Sort of like hopscotch.
What do you call it?
Sort of like a hopscotch.
That's what I believe. That's
Sort of.
something
Yeah.
similar. And then we were also playing with the ball, the ball. And also, it's interesting, as long as I remember I lived in this village, I never traveled to any place. Although we were only 50 miles from Warsaw, and from this place, Ostrov Mazowiec, you see, I was born in this place which is called Wąsowa. Wąsowa, this is the village, and this was already a bigger place. I now read here, yeah, this is more an enlarged. It shows you with respect to Warsaw where it is. Here it's more expanded. Now, this is already, see, here it's written, this is, they write it in English, but really it's in Yiddish. Alte Eim,
Old.
the old home. Eim is a home, they call it old country. They translate it. So this big city, had 12,000 population, and more than 6,000 were Jews. I know it from the papers here, because here they show also they had 2 papers in Yiddish and 2 in Hebrew, Nativ and the Noga. You see, so this is already another story. And here you have also what you look like. I believe I have it here. Wait, there's too much of your time. Okay. Here they see children in Cheder, when they go in Cheder. And I even definitely have it, this peyot. What do you call it?
Payas.
But in English.
Side locks.
Sidewalks, yeah.
Oh, okay.
I definitely had this. I remember. Like this, you see. They have here even non-Jewish children, they still have it. It's not, so with us, it was a part of life.
And you said you played with the non-Jewish children?
Yeah,
Was
yeah.
that common? It wasn't? Or was it just
Yeah,
like-
it was common. It was common. The other thing I liked, I tell you, because I never traveled from the village. So they had what they call a coach or a carriage. That means you have a horse
Oh, yeah.
and you have there a place for 2 people maybe to sit with a little cover, and you have the one who is the driver, not the driver, you know, in the car,
Yeah.
but he manages the horse. And many times I like to jump on it in the back. It cannot see me, and in this way I ride. And what happened to me, I remember, this I cannot forget. After my father died, I was very little. But the image of death came to me not so much like a terrible thing, but as a thing that I will never see my father, and it's a way, I don't know what. And then I was thinking about my own death, and that's true. And then as I think, I say to myself, if death will come, I will run away. And once you run away, as a child, you run, you cannot be dead when you run, you see. But I forgot, maybe I will not be able to run. No. So this was This I remember quite well. Something sticks in your mind, you know. Yeah.
You said your family was very religious.
Yeah.
What were like the typical holidays like? for
Oh,
your family?
the most, you see, the holidays was Passover, Rosh Hashanah, and Yom Kippur. You know what is Yom Kippur?
I know of it. I don't know very much about
No,
it.
Yom in Hebrew it means the day. Kippur it means atonement. That's what it means. And I remember in my house, my mother, she will take a chicken. I don't know, there's such a ceremony. You go like this all around, and then she will say all the blessing in Yiddish, because she did not know Hebrew. See, women, they did not have so much education like men. My father, he knew Hebrew. And you know, all this ceremony, and then you kill the chicken. You kill it, and then probably you use it as food. It's a kapara. It means it's a victim. It's a victim of something. Also from my father, I remember only one Passover with my father, because the Passover was the biggest holiday. What do I mean? Even we were poor, but still for Passover, my mother, she will begin to work maybe 2 weeks before. You have to clean up the whole house, because what they sold, you're not allowed to have chametz. You know what is chametz? Chametz is you are not have anything which is related to bread. Bread, it means with yeast, you grow it with yeast, because you may say matzah, the din bread is also bread, but it is grown without any yeast. So first you have to clean up, and the other thing, we still had in our house a little attic, and then you use completely different dishes. Even we were poor, but when it came Passover, we were like kings. Tell me, all these beautiful dishes came out, and then of course we had the table. Yeah, what was our room? The room where we were at the food. This was like the living room, the dining room, and the kitchen. It's in the same place, because the kitchen was a stove that for winter it will make hot in the house, and you will also cook. And in this room we had one table, a long table, a wooden table, and benches, 2 benches, from this side and the other side, 2 benches, and maybe we had also chairs. I cannot remember exactly. It's probably we had. And then when we had the Passover, this is a whole ceremony, because you have to read the Agadah. It's the story of Passover, which comes from when the Jews were freed from Egypt. And also you say there that you have to remember, like you were a slave in Egypt. You have to remember it. It means internalize it. And then there's a lot of singing. And I remember as a little boy, when I remember with my father, that in the middle I fell asleep. And then I wake up. Yeah. And sometimes when I was ill a little, I started to learn to meditate. Yeah, now. And one of my meditation was to lock on that image. And I could do it. Now I cannot do it so well. When I was locking in, it's like I live the reality of now, and I'm transferred to another world. You know meditation? So, yeah, but that's
Yeah.
okay, that's good. So that's what, yeah, what did you ask more? I forgot.
About the holidays. What kinds
Yeah,
of
so
food
this
you
was the main, the holiday, and then Rosh Hashanah, I remember the synagogue. Oh, also fasting, you see. I was fasting a part of the day. And sometimes even in our village it was still hard because the Jewish holidays change. Because they are adjusted according to the moon, and then you have also to make adjustment with the months, because in order to match it to the solar year. So usually we were going to the synagogue, but everything was close, the synagogue was on the same side, so the Jews were living in one side of the street, and the Gentiles in the other. There were more, so we did not occupy so much place. And the Rosh Hashanah, I remember, this was a long time in the synagogue, very long time, because you are almost in Yom Kippur, the same thing. And usually the women, so the synagogue was also very simple. There was nothing there. Inside it was just plain wood, and the benches were simple, because it was a poor place, but it does not mean if you are poor, like you don't need to be poor, spiritually. You can still have a rich life. And so this is the holidays, and Simchat Torah, that's another holiday, or Shavuot, that's another holiday when we celebrate when the Torah was given. The Torah, that means the 5 books of Moses. They call it Torah. Now in modern Hebrew, Torah will mean also theory. Like you say in Hebrew. You know a little Hebrew?
קצת.
תורת היחסות של אלברט איינשטיין. That means the theory of special relativity of Albert Einstein. So you will say the same word, Torah. So it expanded. But at that time, Torah really in Hebrew means, because I also studied Hebrew later in my life, Torah comes from the word hore, parent, and it means to instruct. So like a parent has to instruct the children, so also the Torah, these books have to instruct your life. That's what it means. So this were but what I remember most is the Passover, and of course Shabbat. You see, when it comes to Shabbat, we had the Shabbos Goy. You know the Shabbos Goy?
Yeah.
That means we are not allowed to keep the fire on Shabbat. And of course, it was not frigidaire at that time. You have to remember. Not to speak about frigidaire, there was no shower, nothing. You wash in a little top. You wash yourself a little outside. So we had a neighbor, a Gentile, that he will come and he will add wood to the stove. And in the stove, the things, no, it was a stove, one for cooking, and one was like a fireplace. So in the fireplace, you could just keep the food all the time with a very small fire, and it will be warm.
What type of food did you keep in there?
Oh, on Shabbat was the best food. On Shabbat you will have meat, then you will have what they call potatoes. In Yiddish they call it chund. Chund, that means you mix the potatoes with the meat and with beans, and this makes it like it becomes a little, not watery, but
Stew.
a stew, yeah. So if you put a little spices, maybe some garlic and other salt, so it becomes very tasty, because it becomes also a little brown from the heat, you know. So the food was, on Shabbat we were like kings, you know. On Shabbat this was, and you don't play anymore outside with the children, cannot go out and play. And I very much like to play outside. I liked all the time the open. I have to tell you one more thing. It was a lot anti-Semitism in that village. First of all, there was a very old church, The church was probably from 1450. Yeah, it was old. And I loved coming there. And I myself remember, sometimes my parents will not be at home. And these hooligans, some of the Gentiles, they will come in and they will beat up my grandfather, not the grandmother. They will just beat him up for no reason. And I could only cry, I could not help him, I could not fight with them, know this. And I remember one time, this also I remember, I was very, very little. And I walked because I always like to wander outside, I don't know, I'm not, what do you call it in English? It's like, you are not patient enough.
Oh.
Very word for this. Now I became already patient. When you grow older, you become patient. So I was walking, and I was close to the well, to the well of water, you know. And I remember a Paul, he lifts me, and he begins to curse me, and he holds me like this above the well. He could drop me down. And he said, Parshiwy Żydek. It means, Parshiwy, that's in Polish. In the English word, it means if you have in your body an illness and you have full of wounds, that's maybe tsarat, they call it in Hebrew tsarat. I don't know exactly in English, I will have to look it over another time. So that means somebody that you have to stay away from him. It's a bad word. And it sticks in my memory because even at that point I could not understand so much the significance of this, that I'm going, this may be the end of my life. It did not come in my mind even, you know, but there was still a little instinctive fear. So this I remember.
Was this another, like an older child or an adult that held you over the well?
Oh yeah, he was an adult. No, he was not a child. No, he was not a child. This was probably, was not very old, but he probably was in the 20s, yeah. It was not. But at the end, I'm good luck. Otherwise, I will not be here. Who knows?
In school, did you only study religion, or did you study with other non-Jewish children?
You see, I had also to study in Polish school.
Okay.
I also, because I really, at home, we spoke only Yiddish. So I did not know Polish. Polish is only from this. It's interesting, after I studied in the Cheder, I forgot everything. Because in the Cheder, the studying was more rote. That means you repeat. So you had to study the Aleph Beit. And then the advanced, I already studied in the Cheder only 2 years. And even in the school also, because in 1939 I already left Poland. I left this village. And what we studied in the Cheder was the Aleph Beit. The Aleph Beit, it means alphabet.
Oh.
In Hebrew they say Aleph Beit. You see, Aleph Beit, and also you see the Hebrew Aleph Beit has only consonants. There's no letter for a vowel. So for a vowel you have punctuation. Even this one, which is written here in, oh yeah, you see here it's written Ostrover. Now this is in Yiddish, Ostrov Mazowiecki. Ostrov Mazowiecki. And here, for example, is Nun Tav Beit. But I already know how to read it, and I know Nativ, that means the road, the way. Once you already know the language, you can read without vowels. You read without vowels. So in the Cheder I had to study the vowels, and then after you know this, you begin to read the Bible. First we read the Bible a little, then we go Rashi, that's a scholar who lived in the medieval ages, and he had a different script a little in Hebrew, and he also gave explanation to the Bible. We had to read this, and then we had to read other books, the Mishnah, but we could not, it was difficult to understand, because we did not study the Hebrew as a language. We studied it as a prayer, because the language we spoke was Yiddish. This was our language. But when I studied in Holy School, as even I remember, even up to now, I still remember one song, and it goes like this. Zaszali górale owiec, owiec, od końca do końca, tak jest, tak jest. This is a dance, and then it goes, tam na pole góralice, caliruj, caliruj, czemu z nami nie tańcujesz, Jasiu mój? You see, you remember more things which you like. You see, I did not force myself to remember it, but things, and also I understand the words. You see, when you understand the words, it reinforces. So essentially I studied both schools, but in the Hebrew school, the Cheder is more related to the prayer, not to. Later I studied Hebrew as a language. You see, it was not a secular thing anymore. It was actually as any other language. Yeah. Yeah.
In the Polish school,
Yeah.
what kind of, you just learned like the Polish language? Did you learn anything else? Do you know?
We learned essentially the language, and we learned some literature. Polish literature, and we learned also the history. We learned the Polish history. I forgot already a lot, but it was time. I almost knew all the kings because they had kings and all this. I am not sure that we learned mathematics or arithmetics. I don't think so. No, so it was mainly the language and the history, because I knew a lot about the history of Poland. And the only source I could have it is from this little school. Because once later I was in the Soviet Union, we did not, this was already a difficult story. Yeah.
Can you remember what you wanted to be when you grew up when you were younger? Was there anything, did you want to be like any profession or anything?
I tell you the truth, I did not think about it. At that time I did not think about it. But when I was, because you remember when we speak now, this is, when I left Poland I was 7 years. 7 years. I did not think about professions, I was too, I think when I was a child I was very childish. And what I mean, for me the playing outside, this was my greatest excitement. So I was not, I was still thinking of course, but also I like to learn, this I remember. I like to learn because, and this has to do with the home, because in the home, even if we don't learn any science, of course, in the religious home, what you study, what you learn is mainly religious books. The religious books is related to God and not to obey all the mitzvot, to be truthful. I remember, for example, one time I was walking in the street. It was one street, you know, what was there where to walk. It was no pavement, nothing. And I find an eraser, you know, a little eraser. then I bring it to my mother. That means if you find something, you have to keep it. And then my mother, she will go to the rabbi. And you see, we learned that we are not allowed to steal or this type of thing, help the others, and behave in a good way, because this is some of the religious teachings, you know. Yeah, this I remember this thing with the razor, really. Sometimes stupid thing you remember. It's not stupid, but and then other things, sometimes relatives will come and they will speak, and sometimes somebody made a remark that I'm smart. I don't know from where they got it. But I have the impression I had that these older people, they think that they are something special. Even when I was young, and we, the little one, like we are, can shuffle them to the side. So I had a little, maybe a reflection, I don't know what to call it, or whatever. Yeah.
Were you close with your mother?
Well,
Were you close with your mother, being the youngest?
with my mother I was very close, because my mother, you see, my father I remember very, very little. It's very foggy. But my mother, I remember quite well her face. I remember that she was not tall, and all the time she was worrying all the time.
She was worried?
Worrying all the time. And you could see on her face that she looked older than her age. The face was very pale. Because you have to remember, the father is not there anymore. My father, she had to work in the store. So in the store, you have a bell on the door. Because who knows, not many people come to buy there at all. So she will work at home. When she hears the ring, she runs to the store, because it is in the same house. Then she has to cook. And sometimes we will go together. I remember the only trips I had is with my mother. Walking, we go to the one where we buy milk. So when we buy the milk, it's still warm from the car, because we take it, that it's not from the store, we're taking it from the person, you know. And also I remember one time I was ill, I had severe pain in my ears, and this is the only time I remember I got maybe a quarter of an orange. I never ate this in my life. I don't know where she got it from me. This was like a special thing, you know. So, and sometimes of course you go to the doctor, and they will, when you get sick, they will do what they call bankies. That means they put little glasses. You put a fire inside. Put a fire, and then they put it on your back.
Oh.
They put it in your back, and what happens once, because it was hot, and now when the heat cools, it becomes a vacuum inside. Now I understand it, how it works. And then it applies pressure, and this heals you. They believed in such a thing. And the other thing, if you have a cold, then you drink tea with lemon. You see, with honey. Oh, with honey, yeah, honey. Honey we could buy that, yeah, we had honey. Yeah, that's what it is.
So your mother worked in the store immediately after your father passed away?
Yes,
Just in
yeah,
this role?
because my other brother was not with us anymore. You see, I'm not sure from where they got the money, but they sent him to a city with the name Vilna, which is in Latvia. It's far away. But I was reading in this paper, I did not know this is in English. In fact, this is a book, it was published in Israel. It was translated from Hebrew into English. And they say it was already at that time a rail track from this city, Ostrov-Mazoviec, to Petersburg. So it went also through Vilna. So you could travel already. But for me, this village was everything.
And
You
what
know?
was your brother's name that went to, what was the name of the village?
Yosef. Now you have another brother, Binyamin. That's your name. Gazriel, Israel.
Do you know why they sent your brother?
Oh, why they send him?
Yeah.
Oh, because they want to study in the yeshiva. Yeshiva is a higher religious school. You see, in our village, is only you study for small children. But once you become older than 13 years, there was nothing what to study there anymore.
Oh, okay.
So they could probably send him also to here. In this city was also a yeshiva, I read here. But I don't know, maybe this was more famous. You see, Vilna, you know what they call Vilna? They call it the Lita Shel Yerushalayim. That means the city Vilna is like Jerusalem of Lita. They compared Vilna to Jerusalem. Jerusalem is a holy city, you see. So this city, Vilna, is such a big Jewish center that it's so important. So it was a big yichus. Sometimes I cannot find words in English. It's a big privilege.
Oh.
It's a big privilege to go and study at such a high school. It's such a famous school where the rabbis, famous. And there were a lot of scholars in Jewish studies, Baal Shem Tov and others. So it's a whole. So this way they send them there.
What kind of things did you sell in the store? Did your mother sell in the store? What kind of things did you have in the store to sell?
In the story?
In your store?
Oh, in the store. The store was just. The store you could buy a notebook, you could buy a pencil, you could buy it's small hardware, a ball to play for children, maybe also something for the kitchen, minor things. It was not a big store. The whole store was probably like half of this room.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it was not big but was still enough, Sometimes I was going on to the store, but I was not, she will not let me. I will sell there what I'm going to do. I will probably make mistakes, because at that time they did not have all these machines that gives you the price. You just scan everything. You had to go with the pencil and write. Yeah.
What other types of places were in your village besides your store and the synagogue? And were there any other places that you went to, any other stores you can remember?
Really, the village was very little there, and I was more involved in the Jewish places, although the village was small. But we will go sometime, there was also a butcher, that means to buy meat, there was a place. And this meat was just hanging the store, you could see, and then you say you want from this and you will cut a piece and it weighs here. So that's all. I don't know, I even cannot remember from where did we get the food. The food, it had to be a store probably, I assume, where they sell food, or you go like we were going for the milk directly to the farmer. The same thing, you could buy potatoes and baking, we were baking at home. So you don't need much really. You don't go like you go in a store here and you have thousands of items. There was not many items there. And the food was almost the same thing. Bread was the main food. Bread. And sometimes I will have, if I add a little sour milk, I still remember the taste of sour milk. And this was, first of all, it was fresh. And the sour milk, my mother, she will do it herself. Because you make the milk, and you got something with a piece of cloth, and then you go and you you rotate it until it becomes heavy, and most of it she will make her own, or you will buy it, and cheese, the same thing, cheese, you will also can make from this. So we were more or less self-sufficient. And of course, when you have to read, then you have a kerosene lamp, That's all. But also it was dangerous, so you had shutters. That where the window is, you will have a hole in the wall, a hole through the wall. That a piece of metal will go in from the shutter outside, and then you lock it here, inside. And then they cannot open the shutter. They cannot open because it was dangerous. It was, it was not an easy life. But I was still joyful because I like to play. When you are young, you have this, the vitality of the body. Who knows what it is? Maybe that's what it is.
You said that earlier the men would come in and beat up your grandfather, and you say it's dangerous. Was there any other occasions where something like this happened?
I did not remember with my father it happens. It happened usually for some reason when my mother was not at home. I don't remember that my mother was beaten up, but they will not go to my grandmother. You see, and sometimes it was bleeding. This was not a little thing, I don't know, or these were bad people, or they had hatred to the Jews, because at that time they were thinking that the Jews are the ones who killed Jesus. But Jesus, after all, he himself was a Jew. They already know it now. But these people, they were Catholics. The Poles said they were not Protestants, they were Catholics. And that's the only thing I remember. Except this thing which I had with the well, I don't remember that anybody in the village attacked me. And with the children, we were friendly. With in fact, the non-Jewish girls, they look a lot more stronger and more forceful. In Yiddish, they call them shikse. They give a special name for a girl who is not Jewish. They call it shikse. And Yiddish is a maidel, a maidel. You see, you don't know Yiddish.
No, I don't.
You know, English. English is good. That's good,
Were these people from your village that came into your home?
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah, because our village was, you have to remember, in my village when I was there, I never saw a car. All the transportation was with the horse, or in the winter, on the ice, or on the snow, that's another vehicle. Maglisha, what do you say it in English? Say a word for this.
Skiing?
No, not skiing. People can sit there actually, in the horses.
A sled?
Is it a sled?
Sled.
A sled,
On the
maybe.
snow?
What?
On the snow, it's a sled.
Yeah, a sled. It means it's actually like a little bus. Not too many people, but you go in there, you have these two things, and you have a horse, and you will go. You go this way, but I was going with skating, you know. But this was in Russia, not here. No, here I was not. I did not have skating. My mother said this was probably too expensive to buy even. It's not so simple, you know. And everything, if you have the pens, you will always have patches because you don't buy anything, you just repair it. And in spite of this, I still have good memories, you know, because it was more a life of spirituality, I would say, specifically the holidays. And when it came Shabbat, my mother, she will Ladliket Anirot, the light, the candles. She will light the candles and give the blessing. But the blessing will be in Yiddish. Usually you have to say it in Hebrew, but in Yiddish. All this will be in Yiddish.
And your grandparents spoke Yiddish as well?
What?
Your grandparents spoke Yiddish
Of
as well?
course, of course. So they knew, I'm not sure if they knew Polish. I mean, they probably knew Polish. But they were not, at that time I'm sure they were already in the mid-60s.
Was it common for multiple generations to live in the same household, like grandparents?
Of
parents,
course, this was normal.
Mhm.
This was very normal. You cannot imagine. First of all, people don't have much. And there's so much connection, you know, that's what it is. You stay together. You stay together. There was no problem, you know. And also it makes you feel an extended family, you see. It's extended and you give a honor to all the people. You see, you give a honor to all the people. Because this is a part already from the Bible that you have to give honor. Yeah.
You said that some of your relatives would come and visit.
Yeah.
Where would they come from? Where were they from? Do you know?
They probably lived in Poland. They did not. I know we had also relatives in America. How do I know? Because from time to time we will receive packages from America. It was mainly clothes. It was not great things. Maybe probably things they did not need it. They sent it back. But for us it was a big deal. It was relatives and also people, how do you say it, acquaintances. It means people, they knew them.
Oh, okay.
And we meet together, you know. We meet together and then they will exchange different views about life and about their children and this type of thing. But I don't have specific memories who these people were, but they were definitely relatives. And also my brother sometimes will come, the older brother who already married with his wife, yeah. Not sure, I don't think he had children at that time. It was a young age, yeah.
Did you have any closer friends in the village? Anyone who you were particularly close with?
I don't think I had specifically. I think the friends was almost all of them at the same level. I cannot point out anybody specific because I was more like, I get excited in the moment. When I was playing like the whole world, even now I play sometimes chess. So when I play chess I forget the whole world. But when you are young it's even more. And when I was playing with the ball, like you get the image, this is the whole world, there's nothing beyond it. You know, not that you think this way, it's not that you think, but the concentration is so much, and it seems, but I still like to read. I was reading, but mainly in Yiddish. But I remember very little what I read. Believe me, from that time. I don't remember much. And, because memory is also a gift. You see, if you have a good memory, it's good, but because memory also gives you continuity. Specifically, older people lose their memory. And I also, sometimes when I speak and I feel that the thread of thought, I lose not now for some reason, but you can lose your thread specifically when you have you stop somewhere and then you start again. Then I can forget, where did I stop? You see,
Right.
it happens. It can happen also when you are young.
5 minutes.
Oh, I didn't ask this earlier, but when you were talking about the, what is it called, the locks of hair?
Yeah.
Well, what else was typical for you to wear besides anything?
Keep up.
No, at that time, you see, I was young, so I did not wear talit or this type of thing. It was just regular clothes. Usually they were black. When you go to the synagogue on a holiday, the dress was more or less black. Otherwise, but always I was walking with long pants, not short. This I remember. And you have to be dressed when you go out this way, except the locks, no, not something special. So if you finish with me today with this, then you have to ask me. With the Germans, that's an important thing. When the Germans came to our village, we were still there. Or you want to cover it the next time?
The next.
The next time we're gonna.
Okay,
Yeah.
But I mean,
okay.
we,
Yeah, he was just gonna
I
switch
was
the
just-
tape because the first tape ends at a certain.
Okay,
point.
okay.
Yeah, we were.
yeah.
Okay.
We,
So what is other things I
He's
can...
gonna switch it. He's gonna switch the tapes.
Yeah, I want to be outside a lot. And maybe it's, I believe when you grow, when you get born, you come becoming the nation. What's it called in English, I believe. Did you hear this word, tabula rasa?
I've heard that.
It's
Oh yeah, it's like. Yeah, no.
tabula, no, it's Latin. Tabula is a table, rasa blank, that you are born like a blank thing. But it's not true. I believe when you are born, you already have some program in your, something is programmed, otherwise the environment can make everybody the same. That's, I don't know.
Did you say you walked to this other village
Yeah.
when you were younger?
Yeah, we walked. I walked with my mom. See, with my father I cannot, because it's so young that he was not a long time with me. 3 years. From 3 years. I was thinking one time that I remember when they did circumcision on me, but that's impossible because I was 8 days. 8 days, that's impossible.
Yeah.
That's impossible. And also the wedding, I remember. I told you about the wedding?
The wedding?
Yeah, it was
Yeah.
one wedding in the village, I remember. And this was not far from our house, it was not with us. But when it was a wedding, then all the Jewish people, everybody was cooking and preparing. It was not a thing, because we were poor, everyone helps the other, you know. He helps the other, and it was so much cake and thing, and I was running all around. And then when the groom comes in, he comes with a horse. And this, I saw the horse, like it was gold plated all around, you know. It was like a king comes in. I don't know. And then, of course, you have all these celebrations with the food and singing in Yiddish, you know. Like they have this song. Schein wie die Levonne, lichtig wie die Sterne, von Himmel am Atone, hast du mir zugeschickt. The Jewish songs are sad a little, you know. But it was, and also, so the wedding, and also I remember at least 1 year was a yerit. And a yerit, it means this is like, it's like a flea market, I believe. They will call it here a flea market. That means everybody will come, and whoever can sell something, it will come, and this was in the middle of the street, and you will have little things, and you will have people who also play with the violin, you know, yeah, it was a whole thing, and at that time you could see also people who are handicapped and weak, and then you will have beggars and all this. It's a wall, and this lasted maybe 2 or 3 days.
Wow.
Yeah, it was a big thing, and then maybe you could buy some bargains there, you know. So it was, although it was a small village, but my main activities there was studying in the, see, when I'm little, I was at home. You know, when you are very little, of course you are at home. In the home we had 3 or 4 rooms, this I remember. And 1 room for this, I had a room, and also I remember when my father was still alive, and I would wake up, I would rush to his bed, stay with him, not with the mother, with the father, you see. And unfortunately, it happened this disaster, you know. But when it happens such a long time, you begin to look objectively. Although sometimes when I begin to speak about my mother, I become too emotional. And almost begin to cry, or I cannot speak, but not always. You never know what is going on inside. You never know. Because you're changing all the time.
So did you have a bar mitzvah?
You see, the bar mitzvah, I was already in the Soviet Union, so I did not have a bar mitzvah. I was, you know, I told you, 7 years we left, and circumstances why we left and all this has to do with the Germans. And this you will ask me probably the next time, yeah. Because this was a big turning point in our life. And because of this, I lost all my family, you see. Because after the war, I already know my father, I will not go into this, we will speak already about this when it comes time, you know. About the village, I think that's more or less, yeah. I only remember that one time it was this, the ruler of Poland was a marshal. Marshal is a higher degree than a general. Pilsudski. And he was more or less not favorable to the Jews, but he did not hate them. Later in the government, they became more anti-Semitic and came out different laws. And I remember one time, and I don't think this was a law from the government, but it was something that everybody has to paint the outside house at a certain color. And for us, this was an expensive thing to do,
Right.
you see, because you don't have much income, you know. So it was a lot of difficulties in life. But in spite of all this, when it came the holidays, we are like different people. Specifically when it came Shabbat, Shabbat is a rest day, and on that day you have the best food. And also the table looks much nicer, because you have a white cloth. The other days everything was bare, and my mother does not need to work, because the food is already cooked, so it cooks by itself. She only has to serve it. And so it was, but things change in this world. Yeah.
Anything else? Do you guys have any questions?
I think that you
That was great.
explained a lot. Yeah, that was really great.
I enjoyed
I
that.
try to do my best.
No, it was excellent. Thank you very
And
much.
yeah, if we have questions, we'll definitely ask them.
Yeah, that's okay, that's okay. it's good that you have enough energy to study. That's good.
Should we maybe set a time?
So you are in English
Yeah,
to be outside a lot,
Mm-hmm.
and maybe it's. I believe when you grow, when you get born, you come become inclination.
Mm-hmm.
What's they call in English? I believe. Did you hear this word tabula rasa?
I've heard that.
It's
Oh yeah, it's like. Yeah, no.
tabula. No, it's Latin. Tabula is a table. Rasa blank. That you are born like a blank thing, but
Yeah.
it's not true.
Oh.
I believe when you are born, you already have some program in your. Something is programmed. Otherwise the environment can make everybody the same.
Mm-hmm.
That's. I don't know.
Did you say you walked to this other village
Yeah.
when you were younger?
Yeah, we walked. I walked with my mom. See, with my father I cannot, because it's so young that he was not a long time with me.
Mm-hmm.
3 years.
Mm-hmm.
From 3 years. I was thinking one time that I remember when they did circumcision on me, but that's impossible because I was 8 days. 8 days, that's impossible.
Yeah.
That's impossible. And also the wedding, I remember. I told you about the wedding?
The wedding?
Yeah, it was
Yeah.
one wedding in the village, I remember. And this was not far from our house, it was not with us. But when it was a wedding, then all the Jewish people, everybody was cooking and preparing. It was not a thing, because we were poor, one helps the other, you know. He helps the other, and it was so much cake and thing, and I was running all around. And then when the groom comes in, he comes with a horse. And this I saw the horse, like it was gold plated all around, you know. It was like a king comes in. I don't know. And then of course you have all these celebrations with the food and singing in Yiddish, you know. Like they have this song. Schein wie die Levonne, lichtig wie die Sterne, von Himmel am Atune, aus der Witze geschickt. The Jewish songs are sad a little, you know,
Mm-hmm.
but it was, and also so the wedding, and also I remember at least 1 year was a yerit. And a yerit, it means this is like, it's like a flea market, I believe. They will call it here a flea market. That means everybody will come, and whoever can sell something will come, and this was in the middle of the street, and you will have little things, and you will have people who also play with the violin, you know, yeah, it was a whole thing, and at that time you could see also people who are handicapped and weak, and then you will have beggars and all this. It's a wall, and this lasted maybe 2 or 3 days.
Wow.
Yeah, it was a big thing, and then maybe you could buy some bargains there, you know. So it was, although it was a small village, but my main activities there was studying in the, see, when I'm little, I was at home. You know, when you are very little, of course you are at home.
Mm-hmm.
In the home we had 3 or 4 rooms, this I remember. And 1 room for this, I had a room, and also I remember when my father was still alive, and I would wake up, I would rush to his bed, stay with him, not with the mother, with the father, you see. And unfortunately, it happened this disaster, you know. But when it happens such a long time, you begin to look objectively. Although sometimes when I begin to speak about my mother, I become too emotional. And almost begin to cry, or I cannot speak, but not always. You never know what is going on inside. You never know. Because it's changing, changing all the time.
So did you have a bar mitzvah?
You see, the bar mitzvah, I was already in the Soviet Union, so I did not have a bar mitzvah. I was, you know, I told you, 7 years we left. And circumstances why we left and all this has to do with the Germans. And this you will ask me probably the next time, yeah. Because this was a big turning point in our life. And because of this, I lost all my family. You see, because after the war, I already know my father. I will not go into this. We will speak already about this when it comes time. You know. About the village, I think that's more or less. Yeah. I only remember that one time it was this. The ruler of Poland was a marshal. Marshal is a higher degree than a general. Pilsudski. And he was more or less not favorable to the Jews, but he did not hate them. Later in the government, they became more anti-Semitic and came out different laws. And I remember one time, and I don't think this was a law from the government, but it was something that everybody has to paint the outside house at a certain color. And for us, this was an expensive thing to do,
Right.
you see, because you don't have much income, you know. So it was a lot of difficulties in life. But in spite of all this, when it came to holidays, we are like different people. Specifically when it came Shabbat, Shabbat is a rest day, and on that day you have the best food. And also the table looks much nicer because you have a white cloth. The other days everything was bare, and my mother does not need to work because the food is already cooked, so it cooks by itself. She only has to serve it. And so it was, but things change in this world. Yeah.
Anything else? Do you guys have any questions?
I think that you
That was great.
explained a lot. Yeah, that was really great.
I enjoyed
I
that.
try to do my best.
No, it was excellent. Thank you very
And
much.
yeah, if we have questions, we'll definitely ask them.
Yeah, that's okay, that's okay. It's good that you have enough energy to study, that's good.
Should we maybe set a time?
So you are in English.
Yeah, I'm